What single human has done the most damage to the progression of humanity in the history of mankind? Thomas Midgley Jr. He played a major role in development of tetraethyl leaded gasoline, which went into mass production throughout the 1920 years. This invention meant that the blood lead content in developing children rose, causing numerous problems, including cognitive issues and physical growth. It was also noticed that the rise in blood lead content matched with violence in adolescents in multiple countries. Midgley is also accountable for the discovery of chlorofluorocarbons, CFC, specifically freon, which, as many know, had a drastic impact on the ozone. As of October 2020, the ozone hole above Antarctica sits approximately 23 million square kilometers (8.9 million miles). Although these two inventions seem insignificant compared to more drastic actions taken by other single humans, it's the widespread impacts that his inventions had and are still being felt today. Even though both leaded gasoline and CFCEURs have been banned. The last invention made by Midgley actually killed him. It was to help him maneuver and get out of bed with the use of ropes and pulleys due to him contracting polio, but he got stuck, and eventually his invention strangled himself. Edit. This reply doesn't quite fit the post, but I felt that he had a large impact on society during the 20th century. Trofim Lysenko, a Soviet biologist who thought Gregor Mendel was a reactionary whose thoughts had no place in the Soviet Union. He tried to reinvent agricultural practices to maximize productivity, having farmers put seeds very close together under his belief that plants who belong to the same nucleus will not compete for nutrients. He was given the Order of Lenin 8 times for his pseudotions, while his theories contributed to the deaths of millions through famines that plagued the USSR. Later he was finally discredited after Stalin's death, but then Mao Zedong adopted his practices, which helped cause the Great Chinese Famine. Guy Chorlyak. He was a surgeon in the 1300s who vehemently spoke out against another fellow surgeon, Theodoric Borgognoni. Theodoric was a surgeon who wrote about his theories on proper wound care, and believed that the best thing you can do to a wound is wrap it, and keep it clean. Guy hated what Theodoric was writing, because it directly went against the teachings of Galen, an ancient Greek surgeon who believed pus was the body's way of balancing your humors. Guy's teachings were widely accepted, and it believed that his ignorance set the development of antisepsis in surgery back about 600 years. Edit. Guy Chorlyak was born in the 1300 years, not 1200 years, as he was alive during the Black Death. Ignaz Semmelweis was the guy who was thrown into a mental asylum for saying surgeons should wash their hands between seeing patients. There's an awesome podcast called Behind the Bastards that is basically all about deconstructing the worst people in history. Would recommend it to anyone interested in this thread. Thomas Midgley Jr. In 1921, this guy that discovered that tetraethyl lead could be used as an anti-knocking fuel additive for cars. It satisfied the needs of oil companies at the time because it worked, was cheap, and was patentable for that purpose. But it was also incredibly toxic, and burning leaded gasoline was hugely pollutive. Eventually, after the creation of the EPA and an oil crisis in the mid-70s, leaded gas was banned in 1996, but the damage was done. Interestingly, the guy didn't even show up for the occasion when the first customer filled up their car with leaded gas. BECAUSE, he was at home, sick with lead poisoning. Thomas Midgley Jr. He invented tetraethyl lead, an anti-knock additive for gasoline. The entire planet is contaminated with lead from his brilliant idea. For a follow-up act, he created chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, which almost destroyed the ozone layer. The Mongolians, army of RegularGuyy, when they destroyed Baghdad's libraries that contained many of the past knowledge that set back humanity years. OP is compiling a hit list for their time-traveling journeys. Purportedly, the unnamed inventor of flexible glass, Vitrum Flexile, brought a drinking bowl made of the material before Tiberius Caesar. The bowl was put through a test to break it, but it merely dented, rather than shattering. The inventor repaired the bowl easily with a small hammer, according to Petronius. After the inventor swore that he was the only man alive who knew the manufacturing technique, Tiberius had the man executed. He feared that the glass would devalue gold and silver, since the material might be more valuable. https://n.mwikipedia.org/wiki/flexible_glass. Robert Maxwell, father of Ghislaine. The man was the leading cause of paywalled scientific articles today. Before him, science publishing was relatively open. He helped shape the industry into the cancer on academia it is today. Edit. Quite the thing to wake up to. Thanks everyone. For those interested, I found an article that details the events pretty well. The Doctor version is that through use of PR marketing, exclusivity deals, and copyright law, Maxwell through Pergamon Press turned scientific publishing from a relatively non-profit driven endeavor to a predatory industry that charged institutions out the nose for research they paid nothing for. Check out Alexandra and Seb. They've definitely helped many people who can't access scientific research. Video on Seb. https://www.youtube.com/watch v = priwci6szlo. Article. https://www.theguardian.com/science/2017/jun/27/profitable business scientific publishing bad for science. I would suggest Andrew Wakefield. His work ileal lymphoid nodular hyperplasia, non-specific colitis, and pervasive developmental disorder in children has been directly responsible for the mistrust of vaccines, the decline of Western rates of vaccination, and basically telling everybody that there's a boogeyman underneath your bed. He is directly responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. He's a scientist who made a mistake. Why are you blaming him? It's not that he made a mistake. He had purposely customized the outcomes to meet the hypothesis, so that he could get rich selling safe vaccines and diagnostic kits. He poisoned the well that saved so many people, just so he could get rich. I have no idea how he can sleep at night. The Ottoman caliphs who banned the printing press from the Muslim world. That's exactly how you destroy a civilization. Emperor Gaozong of China. This is kind of an obscure story, so let me tell you the whole thing. It was the 12th century. When people talk about how China used to be the most technologically advanced part of the world, this is the period they are talking about. Some historians add they were on the brink of industrializing. Then Manchuria invaded and conquered northern China. The imperial court retreated to the south and declared Gaozong, the emperor's brother, as the new emperor. China's top general Yu Fei, who, according to some records, literally had patriotism tattooed on his back, though that might have been made up by someone who wanted to emphasize how unfair the rest of this story is, rallied the army and defeated the Manchus, and was raring to chase them out, but he gets orders from Gaozong to back down, because he'd rather negotiate. These negotiations end up signing away the north half of China. A few years later, the Manchus invade again. Yu Fei beats them again, and pushes all the way back to the old capital, Kaifeng. Then he gets the order to retreat. He responds with a letter saying that he's got the Manchus on the ropes, and he can reconquer northern China in like a month. No, says the emperor, retreat immediately. Eventually, Yu Fei does retreat, but he delays long enough to evacuate the city first, making up some logistical issues as an excuse. At this point, you may be wondering why Gaozong was so reluctant to push an advantage. The answer is that his brother was still alive. The king of Manchuria liked to bring him out once in a while and make fun of him. If Yu Fei reconquered China, he might liberate the rightful emperor, and Gaozong would be out of a job. As such, Gaozong was actively trying to throw the war. And he interpreted Yu Fei's delay at the end of this war as meaning that he had reached the point of at least considering going rogue, so as soon as Yufei got back, he was arrested and promptly executed on treason on the ground of avur. He might have done something. Presumably because the optics on the actual charge, almost winning a war we wanted to lose, were too bad. People realize that this is bull quickly enough, and there are protests, but Gyoza manages to pin everything on one of his advisors, and placated the mob by executing him. So how does this affect the long-term progression of humanity? Well, as I said, China might have been on the brink of industrializing at the time, but didn't have access to enough coal. There are coal deposits in China, but they're all in the north. Second, the Manchus never really got their internal issues sorted out, and 70 years later, were easily conquered by the Mongols, who then recruited a bunch of disaffected Chinese siege engineers. This essentially removed the one weakness of horse archer hordes: they are not good at taking fortresses, and allowed them to wreck half the world. Had China been united at the time, and had been ruled fairly recently by a guy who had, if you recall, been taken prisoner by invaders from the north, so you can bet the defenses would be fairly well maintained, they probably could not have done this. So had it not been for the malice of this one man, the Mongols would probably never have become the juggernaut they eventually did, and the Industrial Revolution might have happened about 500 years ahead of schedule. Sheikh al-Islam. I heard of this guy after hearing someone on TV complain about how this man set the Islamic world back by centuries. In 1515, the age of the Ottoman Empire, he, a learned scholar of the kingdom, issued a decree that forbid printing, press, and made using it punishable by death. Edit, grammar, more context.